I can't work with those guys. Like they're actually just in delusion. They're living in boyhood fantasies. And for me, this whole go out and experiment and learn from my mistakes, it's a boyhood fantasy. And I'm tired of working with boys. I want to work with men. And for me, like masculine men are the guys who at least can recognize the value of a marriage with a woman for through a whole lifetime. And it's like, you don't have to think like, okay, I'm completely ready for that myself. But if you can't see that that's a good thing, and I realize it's not the greatest marketing strategy, because what sells? Well, sex sells. Telling guys that they can just have unlimited amounts of the most horny, crazy, intense sex, that sells. But what I believe we're doing by selling that kind of thing is that we're turning men into zombies. I see men who are just zombified by a culture that's, as you said, feeding them sex all the time, and they're just sitting online and watching sex all the time, and they're actually not dealing with the problems that are holding them back in their life. Hajee Pepping, good to have you on Manifesto's Conversations on Masculinity again.
Yes, good man.
Yeah.
We on again.
Yeah. No, so I imagine most people listening here who know who you are. For those who don't know who you are, then you are the founder and main facilitator of Mankracht, an organization in Holland which is helping men to step into their power direction. You started very much in the foundation of No More Mr. Nice Guy, Robert Glover's work, but you've really been expanding. A lot of the men in our network have attended, and I've also attended some of your public speaking work, which is really, really useful and powerful and great for getting guys to authentically be able to stand up and speak from their heart in front of a group of people.
Yes. Well said, Paul. Well said.
Yeah, thank you. Good. I just, building a little bit of gravitas here with you. And so you've also played a very important role in Maniphesto and the establishment of our online groups. And you and me know each other from many years back. And when one could say, we were just talking about, I was quite a different person back then in some respects. In some respects, I'm probably very much the same person. But one of the areas that I've shifted a lot has been this area of sexuality.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the thing that it remains, Paul, is you're still very stubborn. That's still the same. As this is, no, I'm joking. Yeah. No, but we know each other from a sexual realm, and we have developed. We found each other, I guess, as a mutual interest and, let's say, purpose to support men in living their full potential. I mean, you do it in your way. I do it in my way. We have supported each other over the years. I've contributed to Manifesto. You've contributed to to cultivating my own ideas and making it sharper by challenging me, and I've been challenging you. So I think we have like a nice mutual, respectful relationship. Huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly the way I would put it as well. And then the purpose of what we want to talk about today was to explore this area of sexuality, because, as I said, I've really changed and moved away from a life where I was, 5-6 years ago, living in kind of polyamorous open relationships, to finding that far better for me was, and where I am today now, is married. My third son is on the way to be born here in April.
Cool, Well,
I didn't tell you that. Yes. Okay.
No, this is a surprise. Awesome. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah. And just a very, very different approach to relationships. I also converted to Orthodox Christianity, which is an even more extreme thing, I guess, and for a lot of these things as well. Yeah. So my thing, Hajee, was to kind of start off with figuring out and trying to, if we can agree on some things that we agree about as far as relationships with the woman is concerned. And maybe there'll be some things that we can kind of sharpen in the way I saw it. But I've written down a couple of things. And then after that, once we've established like these are the things that we agree about, then we can start looking at things that we look at a little bit differently. Does that make like a...
Yeah, sure, man. Bring it on. I mean, yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to start with was I think a very widespread problem that we have in our society that I think both of us see is that a lot of men go into monogamous relationships because they feel forced to be monogamous. So while they kind of have fantasies or ideas about like open relationships as something that would be amazing, they believe that they have to be monogamous. It's kind of like this cultural conditioning, or it's society that forces them to that. And so then they do that, but they do it in a kind of like a trying to be the nice guy, but that their heart isn't really in it as well.
But you see this as a problem, or as a because when I entered my relationship, for me it was also like a monogamous adventure when we started. Like there was no, there was no thought of me, exploring sexuality outside of my relationship. Especially the first years, there was also no longing, no desire, no need, and this was like the standard. That's at least how I grew into my relationship. I mean, this is like it was a bit of a no-brainer. It was only a few, people that's on the skirts of society that were exploring this kind of stuff, but it was not mainstream at all, and it still isn't, I guess.
Yeah. Becoming more in the Danish media, we're seeing more like, especially there's a story of like women who have like two guys, like that's coming. It's becoming more and more. But I agree, it's still a kind of thing for the margins in general. But it's something, and I guess you're right as well. Most men go into monogamy not at all thinking of it as a possibility for anything else, but also wanting to be monogamous, like seeing the value in that as well.
Yeah. I think, Paul, a big reason for guys stepping into a relationship is, apart from wanting maybe to create a family, but also it's also to have like a guarantee for sexuality. Huh? I mean, I think it is one of the motives why guys, start a relationship big time.
Men in committed relationships have a lot more sex than men who aren't in committed relationships. That seems to be a statistic that seems prevalent as well. So I think that takes me to the second point that I think we've spoken about before, and that we really agree about, is like a very good perspective to put on your relationship and to use on your relationship is seeing it instead of a place to get your needs met for pleasure or whatever it is, seeing it as a container for spiritual growth or a vehicle for spiritual growth.
Yeah, these could be my words. Yeah, definitely. And this is not something that when I started my relationship, it didn't start with that, let's say, perspective on the relationship. It was more like, as you shared, like, oh, this is nice. We're gonna make a family. We're gonna buy a house. We're gonna have a car. We're gonna go on holiday, etc. Like the standard life. But over the years, it turned more and more into this realization that actually, this experience I have with my wife is a container for growth, and luckily we see it both as that, and that makes it like not really nice, but it is challenging, but that's what it is, that's what it is.
Yeah. I think it's worthwhile just saying, like, for me, it's very simple and basic, but men and women, in my experience, and I think most people experience this, we see the world differently. We're wired slightly differently. And so by living together with a person of the opposite gender, I'm confronted with a radically different perspective on reality and often incompatible as well. I've really experienced with my wife, like, if we really disagree about something, then unlike with my male friends, I can just continue to talk at it and go at it. And then at some point, if we spend enough time and energy and we're committed to the process, we'll find ways of understanding each other. With my wife, it'll normally just get worse. Like the disagreement will just get worse because we seem to just perceive things differently in a very fundamental way. Obviously not with everything, but there are some things that I just like, I just don't seem to be able to get to the bottom of it. And it's a mystery to me why we can't solve it some of the time. And in my worst moments, I kind of projected onto her. It must be like her, trauma or something like that as well. But it might be related to both of us and our inadequacies as human beings, I guess, in not being able to. So it seems like by staying together anyway, we work out the knots in our personality somehow, right? Yeah.
Well, I think what you just said, the one thing that I hear in there is like, that you don't understand it, or that it seems to be unsolvable. And I think that's like a typical male perspective on things, that we want to solve things, and and that's also what I encounter in my relationship is sometimes, then I notice in myself the urge to solve stuff, but then hearing her, seeing her, and it's also like, but it does not need to be solved, it just needs to be seen, what's up. And yeah, I don't know, that's why what I like about being in this relationship. It's like this constant being remembered about this. Not everything needs to be solved. So that can also be a great mirror for me, like, but it doesn't need to be solved. Only witnessing is also like a great tool to be together, huh?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
As I get older, then I realize, like, appreciating the mystery of life, where the meeting between the masculine and the feminine is a big part of this mystery. And allowing it to be there. Certainly my wife appreciates it when I'm not trying to solve all the problems and getting in her face about that as well. Yeah.
No, but I like what you say, Paul. I last week I had this thought that I wanted to post on Facebook. I didn't do it yet, but I think life is being normalized way too much. In general. I think what you just said, the mystery, the men, the women, this experience we have here on planet Earth, fucking hey, man, that is something, if you really, tap into that. But it's being so normalized by media and the news, and it's being put in our face what we need to be considered as normal. But fucking hey, it is something, Yeah.
I think that's definitely. And I appreciate, certainly, our relationship has been forged through stepping out of the frames of what one considers normal. And that's been good, because it actually also allows you to see the goodness, or what is normal in a completely new light as well, I guess. So like part of that is, I guess, finding the mystery in everything. Okay, but so I want to start going into a little bit more difficult territory here, Hajee. So because it's nice to find everything we agree about, but I still think we can agree on, and maybe I should just can I make it just explicit? So while I've kind of married and am 100% certain that the rest of my life I will not only never have sex with another woman, I actually just avoid any kind of intimacy and flirting with other women as well. I focus all of my sexual energy exclusively on my wife. That also means I don't watch porn, I don't masturbate. I've slipped up, sometimes in the last couple of years. But like that, my clear principle and what I really see as valuable and good for me in my life is to direct all of my sexual energy towards my wife. And when I do that, it's a very, very powerful force in our relationship as that container for spiritual growth. And I think you understand that, and that makes sense to you. And then you've decided to arrange your life in a different way. I'd rather let you put some words on that as to how you're doing that. Then we can take it from there.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. A bit of history then, eh? I mean, we are together, me and my wife, for 23 years now, eh? So we have a long history. We have been monogamous the first 12 years of our relationship, yeah. And that is, and I don't regret that period, or not at all. I think I'm so happy that we had that period, because that kind of created such a strong foundation of trust and mutual respect that we have for each other, yeah. Nevertheless, after being together for 12 years, there suddenly came this, point in our relationship where we kind of got a bit bored with each other, especially sexual. Well, not bored, but we couldn't make it work anymore. It was like we hardly had sex anymore. It was difficult to, let's say, to find this intimacy with each other. There was a lot of blaming and to each other, and then anyway. Mm-hmm. Difficult, yeah. Now, we did found some answers in our relationship crisis, I would call it that, yeah. We did some relationship therapy, didn't really work out for us, but we also found some answers in the realm of Tantra, yeah. And there we kind of, received some teachings that at least resonated with us, and said like, but that's what's up with our relationship, the healthy, original polarity was a bit gone, and that was reflected in our sexual life. So there we, turned this a bit around, and I started to step a little bit, no, not a bit. I stepped up in my more masculine essence, and she kind of embraced her feminine essence a bit more, and we played around with this, and we can talk hours over this, of course, but But of course, we apply this in our daily life by me taking sometimes a bit more of the lead, my wife sometimes, being a bit more, following, and not out of weakness, but it's like, just out of, with the end goal to create polarity again, to have joy, and to, so I could say like, oh fuck yeah, that's my wife, and like, oh fuck, she's hot, and that she can say, yeah, that's my man, and I'm really appreciating my man being there, leading our family. Yeah. So that was really good, and that was reflected in sexuality as well. So we had sex again, and we still have, although now it's like 23 years together. So yeah, I must admit it's still sometimes a struggle to create that polarity again. But we're working on it now. But we also explored sexuality at the time. Like, okay, so sexuality, yeah, we can do it together. But it was also interesting for us to explore having sex with other people. Yeah, in terms of like, maybe my wife had a certain fantasy that that she would like to live out, but yeah, I couldn't. That consisted of more men, for instance. Yeah, so that was like, okay, well, I cannot fulfill that fantasy, so maybe you explore that with guys I trust, and vice versa. So we kind of explored a little bit in opening up our relationship. And I do not want to say that we entered the field of polyamory. We have never been interested in starting a relationship with other people. I want that to be very clear. Because I've always been committed to my wife, and she has always been committed to me, and she still is, and I'm still am. Yeah. But when it comes to sexuality, yeah, we have decided that we said, okay, if there's stuff you want to live out, who am I to hold you back from living that? Yeah, and that's also what we said to each other. Yeah, so that has been the base for us to explore sexuality with other people for a few years. Yeah, a bit, I call it extensively. Yeah, so there was like those were the high years of our sexuality. Yeah, let's say 3 or 4 years we did a lot of stuff. Yeah. And yeah, I think in hindsight that has helped us a lot in living out some of the sexuality, also gaining some relaxation around our sexuality, saying it bluntly, so been there, done that, haha, we don't need to do that anymore. So and now I also notice between me and my wife, we focus more and more on us. But every now and then there is an occasion where where there is an exploration outside of our, let's say, a primary relationship, and that's maybe 2 times, 3 times a year. But at least the option is there, and that's and that's where we're at right now, So we have the option to explore sexuality outside of our relationship. But as I said, it's only about the sexuality. It has nothing to do with me, wanting to have a girlfriend next to it. No.
Why is there that barrier or that distinction for you between only about sex and not about wanting to have a girlfriend along the side?
Oh, first of all, I don't want to have 2 women in my life. I think 1 woman is enough.
More than enough sometimes, right?
Yeah, more than enough. I mean, yeah. No, yeah. No, I don't. I mean, I have some friends who practice polyamory, and oh man, they got 2 relationships, and then there's envy and jealousy and that stuff going on. No, I don't want that in my life. As I said, I'm committed to my wife. We have a son, and this is what we do. This is what we do. Yeah.
Certainly a lot of chaos too. It's not like double the chaos. It's like 10 times the chaos. If you start serious relationships with multiple people, right? At least that's my experience as well. Yeah. I find that really valuable, Hajee, that you give the background and the story and the context, because I think a lot of people kind of misinterpret as soon as they hear, like open relationships or something like that, or, anything like that's not just like strict monogamy, then all the wild fantasies come out of like, like Hajee's every single weekend out there, doing all kinds of really wild and crazy things. And so I think just putting in the context of that, of that committed relationship and a child and that you guys are, modeling a loving relationship with each other is great.
Yeah.
It actually inspires me as well a little bit to contrast my own story a little bit more and give it a little bit more detail on that, because I also went into a marriage, I think I had very low level of reflection about why I was doing it when I did it. Actually, it was just like, that was just the thing to do, and it was spontaneous. A lot of it was just like to get access to one woman that I thought was beautiful and amazing, and I didn't think at all about the long term, really, just like as like I wanted her now kind of thing, right? And so, and the way to do that was to marry her. So that's what I did. And then for us, it was less than 12 years, that's for sure, that we kind of experienced that frustration and stuckness and not being able to meet each other, and periods of like complete dryness regarding sexuality as well. And, to my own, shame, I solved it in the worst possible ways, that I just went looking other places and became totally distanced from her, didn't share myself with her at all. And our relationship collapsed and fell apart after we had become parents to a child as well, which, reflected very badly on certainly, what you said about like that return to the basics of being the man in your relationship and strengthening your masculine side, and her being able to relax into her feminine side. I think we as men need to lead that process. And when we do it, then women do relax, and they, so if we don't do it, then the woman steps up and takes the masculine role. But and some women do that very well, but I don't think it's a healthy thing in the long term for men or for women for that to happen, in general. Although I see, like, for some relationships, that's the way that they work. Yeah. So, but then what happened is then I went on a solo exploration of sexuality just by myself without my wife, because we left each other completely, right? And then landed, and so maybe I think the pendulum swung much more with me than it has with you, and it's been from the beginning you were able to keep more stability, which is a very good masculine trait, and it's been good for your son as well, I'm sure. Yeah. And then why I want to take it is just so, the way I see it, I think one thing. So the next point that I actually had on my list was promiscuity. And I thought maybe this won't be difficult, but like sometimes excessive promiscuity is often a way of avoiding growth. It's a way of distracting yourself and taking some of your attention and spreading it out and avoiding intimacy, the growth that comes from intimacy with one other person. Is that something we also kind of can agree on?
Explain to me what you exactly mean with promiscuity. What is it?
Well, in a very strict sense, it would be anything else than monogamy, I guess.
Monogamy.
Yeah, and then I think, in a general term, promiscuity, it refers to like, multiple regular, concurrent, like at the same time, sex partners, so like sleeping around would probably be the
going
normal term.
Dating one weekend with that woman, and then you go with another woman, and dating a lot, or maybe have different relations going on at the same time, etc. Yeah.
I get promiscuity. It means like excessive sexual exploration or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. And you want to hear my opinion about that?
Yeah. I want to see if we agree on that. Like sleeping around, hooking up with lots of different women, and exploring just sex for the sake of. I can say for my own sake, it was very much, when I started this journey, my ex-wife said to me, she said, Paul, going around and doing this with a whole lot of different people, this is an expression of insecurity. You're trying to like confirm yourself or feel approval by lots of women wanting to have sex with you. And I'm actually amazed when I look back on that at her insight that she had back then, because I rejected that flat out at the time and was like, no, you don't understand. This is a spiritual practice that I'm doing. I'm tantric now, right? I guess she kind of, I think she had some pity on me, but she didn't at all buy into that. And if I look back on her, I was like, she was exactly right. I saw my value as a man based on the number of women who are willing to have sex with me or be sexually intimate with me. And it was a very, very dry, or it was like putting water into a bottle full of holes in it, right? Because it just constantly needed filling up, and it actually needed to, the holes were expanding almost, I needed more and more to get the same kind of kick.
Yeah.
Well,
but couldn't it be that was just your phase of expressing insecurity, Paul? That was necessary for you to go through to at least come to the inside, like, oh fuck, this is not actually what I want or what I need. There is something else that I want and I need.
Yeah. Absolutely. Apparently that was the case. Yeah. I would wish it hadn't happened. And there's deep scars in my relationship with my ex-wife, obviously, because of this, and my relationship with my oldest son, who's now 16 years old, is also deeply impacted by this as well, right? My inability to find an inner strength that I could stand on, but needing external validation from, multiple women, meant that, it's taken a long time to rebuild trust.
With your ex-wife and your son, that's what you say.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm not necessarily saying, Paul, that I would judge on people doing these kind of behaviors. As you said, I think it's great as you describe it as an expression of insecurity, and you cannot expect the whole world to be super confident about themselves. I mean, I also had my phases of insecurity, acting it out maybe in a different way, but it's part of it, and I think anyway, I see a lot of guys in my practice also that hop from relation to relationship, having a deep longing for a stable long-term relationship, but they just can't make it. They can't make it work yet. So there is some, I don't know. I also feel sometimes that they need to live this out, exactly as you did, in order to come to the conclusion like, this is what it's doing.
Yeah. Anyway. It could be that that's the case. And then I think there's also many cases where, and this is part of the reason I'm making this conversation, or that is the reason I'm making this conversation, is because I believe we don't talk enough about the beauty, the value, the depth, and the incredible gift of consciously decided upon monogamy, which is what I want to get to making the case about, I want to, that's what I want to get to as well. And so the next point I had on my list, which I think also you actually agree with, is that we both admire the decision of monogamy when it's done with integrity and when it's done for the right reasons. Like a man who has the right heart in choosing one woman, like that's a brave man. That's a strong man as well. Be able to do it. Yeah.
I agree. I think the side note with this is, I think the side note with this is about, okay, I'm totally in favor of monogamy out of strength and out of love for each other. Yeah. But there's something else, as we discussed earlier, or maybe we can discuss it right now also. There's also monogamy based on fear. And I think, especially in the sexual realm, that is something, I'm not sure if I completely, support that. As you described in the beginning, there is a lot of men choosing stepping into a monogamous relationship while their heart is not really in there, because they're constantly, looking for, other ways to get their sexual needs being met, and if they commit themselves to a monogamous relationship, they're not 100% in there, and then it's like a fear-based monogamous, and it's probably also a woman in there who is like, cutting off the balls of this guy. It's like, you stay here and you don't look at other women, because otherwise I'm gonna chop your head off, So I mean that vibe in a monogamy, that is not something that I support, So if that makes sense, so I think, please, if you choose for monogamy, keep that's at least my take on it. Keep open this conversation about sexuality, and at least stay talkative about it. Yeah. I'm not saying directly that you should go out and explore with other women, but at least express to your woman that you have these sexual desires. Because anyway, I hope you get what I mean. Huh?
No, I definitely get it. And then I wonder if I could even take the position and just, to try it out of like saying like, yeah, so I think we agree, like, a fear-based approach to monogamy, doing it because of that is a big warning sign, big red light. And of course, most people don't realize they're doing that, or, don't have that insight. But like if, but I even think like, I would like to make the case for staying monogamous, but working with those assumptions that is driving that fear or the misunderstanding of it. So for me, like there's a very, there's two levels we're talking about. We're talking about like, action and like what's actually being manifested out in the world. And then we're talking about like the inner heart and the motivations of why people are working, right? And obviously both of them in the best case, and maybe I can use this time now to just put forward like why I see the incredible power of monogamy, because I really believe like it is the one structure, system, agreement, the thing that you can do in your life, the decision you can make in your life that will lead to becoming the most full human being of anything that you could ever do in your entire life. And it's a very difficult thing to do. It actually will require almost, I think it's the most difficult thing one could ever do with one's life actually, is to partner through a whole lifetime with one other person. It requires like almost like a daily, if you want to maintain, especially to maintain like the depth of intimacy and connection with another human being, it requires that you can receive unfair, unjust treatment, all the knocks and blows of another person's ego, and continue to love through that anyway, but do it in a way where you still maintain your integrity, especially as a man, of being able to lead not just yourself but also your partner and your family in a path of growth and more completeness in some ways. And that's such a difficult thing to do. It requires, as I said, like confronting the deepest mysteries of existence in some ways, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
And so this is where I think, like that fear that I'm going into monogamy, it's often like, fear that I'll be alone or something like that. But the realization is like, even in marriage and in monogamy, you're often going to be just alone and the world is going to be very dark around you anyway. And can you continue to love in that situation? Well, if you're able to do that and not then look for a back door. And so maybe this is going to be the first thing I'm really maybe, I'm going to be careful with. But I think sometimes then opening up to other relationships or to, other sexual interactions, it's like, just as you talk about in anger work about like, they can be leaking the energy out in different passive aggression ways, then this can also be, and I get sometimes like, the alternative to that could be much worse. The alternative could be much worse, right? But I also think that sometimes, especially with young men, they're not at all adequately warned in our society today about the dangers of stepping into that. And so it's almost glorified, it's like, or not almost glorified. It is constantly glorified, the lifestyle, it's been like this for a long time. James Bond's been there since like the 60s or something like that, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, just laying down women one after one. But more and more so, I regularly have men telling me like, Paul, I've never heard anyone talking about marriage the way you talk about it. I've never in my entire life heard someone talking about the beauty of like marrying a woman and how fantastic that is. So it's like becoming very hidden in our culture in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, I agree, man. I agree. And I think two things. I think it's interesting what you said about the back door. That has a bit of a negative connotation. As I, in your interpretation, would leak sexual energy. But it is like all being done in full transparency with my wife. Yeah. So there's no hidden thing going on. Yeah. So there's no cheating going on. Yeah. So whenever I have a sexual interaction with someone else, then my wife she's fully aware of this. Yeah. So there's no, and vice versa. Yeah? So then my question would be, is it then still leaking? Yeah. Because can you consider it as leaking then? Yeah, when everything is open and when there's nothing hidden, you know, and when it's, you know, when there is full consent in that sense, yeah, and that my sexual exploration outside of my primary relation might, you know, I'm not sure, but no, I know, I'm sure it definitely serves our primary relationship. Like sometimes I bring back an imprint that I have with someone else. I can bring it back to my relationship, and that could increase the quality of the sex that I have with my wife. You know, is it then leaking, Paul?
Yeah.
I don't consider it. I hear what you're saying, but I don't want to. And I hear, and I totally agree with you with this commitment for one woman. I think we're on the same page there. Yeah, but it is like you know, I consider myself, although I have sexual explorations outside of my relationship, but actually I consider myself pretty much monogamous to my wife. You know,
yeah.
You know, but that depends a little bit on how you would define monogamy. You know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, for me, the definition of monogamy is mean that you sexually exclusive agreement with one person.
Okay.
And then there's another part of that, which is about integrity and honesty, which I think is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But before I answer your question, because I think it's a great question, and I want to try and be open about it, I want to talk about how, like, if we talk about, like, you have sins of the left hand, the left hand, sins of the right hand, right? So the sin of the left hand would be like going out and like having an affair or something like that. The same sin of the right hand, it's more, or the corresponding sin of the right hand is more insidious. It's something like the pride connected to looking down on other people who are not monogamous or not in the same kind of relationship as you are, and then thinking that you're a much better person because of that, leading you into a disconnection from actual real intimacy and connection with other human beings. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's kind of like, you know, overly religious people fall into this very stiff, square, fixed way of being in life that kind of makes them feel very fake. And these are the sins of the right. It's like you're very ascetic, you keep the rules, but you're no longer a real human being because you're just a robot living after the rules, right? And so that's how, you know, in the path that I've chosen, the leaking tends to come there, and it's often quite hidden and hard to pick up on, but it's something connected to the pride of feeling like I'm doing the right thing, but again, the heart isn't in it, and so that's the sin of the right hand. And the sin of the left hand side, I would say, by having that honesty with your wife, what you free yourself from is the shame of being a man without integrity, of being a man who's living a lie, right? Like there's this kind of, like, you know, knowing that the person who I committed my life to, I, you know, married, and I said, like, you know, she's the one, and she believes she's the one, and I have to maintain this illusion that she's the one, but actually I'm getting my kicks from someone else. That's something that tears into your soul as a human being.
Yeah.
I think it can even do it as well if your main source of sexual inspiration and energy also comes from pornography more than your wife. I think it's less impactful because it's not a human being, but I think in the long term it even more turns you into like a kind of zombification if you're getting it more from pornography from your partner, right?
Sure.
But I would still say the leaking is still happening with another partner. That's my take. It's because you have a limited amount of sexual energy, you have a limited amount of life energy, and you're spreading it. You're spreading it. So you're missing out on intimacy with your wife.
Oh, well, that are your words, you know. That are your words. So you know, Paul, what we also should define then what true intimacy is, you know. But I, you know, if I feel into the fact that my wife allows me, for instance, I just, you know, I don't care if it's being aired, you know. I've been to a mistress, yeah. I pay money, yeah. I go to a mistress, she dominates me for a few hours, yeah, and I love that. And when I notice that my wife, you know, sees me in that longing, and allows me to do that, yeah, and actually wants me to do that, yeah, because my heart is in there. That is something, you know, that is a need that I have. And she said, like, please do it with someone else, because, you know, this is not something I can give you. Do it. And then we meet in that mutual understanding, and then, you know, basically she giving that to me. I think, fucking hey, that's intimate, man. When I can meet her in that, let's say, call it, you know, giving or giving each other that freedom, so to speak, yeah. Yeah. And then we meet there again in sexuality. There I yeah, somehow, Paul, that deepens the intimacy between me and my wife. Yeah, at least that's how I experience it. But I also hear you, but then again, it's like, wow, you know, I think that's something beautiful. You know, we always text each other after going out and having sex with, oh, I'm so grateful that we can have this, and you know, it kind of bonds us. Again, and yeah,
I really get
that's
that.
also there. That's also there. You know.
Yeah.
That's so, also there.
And that. Thanks for sharing. And so the way I see that, I think that I'll try to take this like, so what is intimacy? I think that was a great question. Yeah. For me, the kind of intimacy that I want to create with my wife is always in love. It should be intimacy in love, and it should be intimacy that fosters more long-term, deeper intimacy. So for me, a masculine perspective is like, you know, the husband, the man in our relationship. It's that I see my responsibility as the overall, you know, kind of setting the course and the captain of the direction of our relationship, and making sure that the kinds of things we do is, again, in the long term, maximizing our intimacy and our togetherness. And so there are things that both me and my wife fantasize about, you know, or can be drawn towards, that will be more or less good for us. And some of them might even be in the long term destructive for us. And so I think that there's also, you know, it's like, yes, we want to be together. And even sometimes in the slightly negative things, I'll join my wife in pain or in hurt or in frustration. You know, she's really angry with somebody who's done something bad towards her. And I can see like she's triggered and reacting and stuff like that. And, you know, even though I can sometimes think like, okay, she's overreacting, she's being a bit childish, I'll sometimes go there and meet her there and be with her there in her anger or something like that, right? But I also put limits to where I meet her, because there's sometimes where I think like, well, what she's doing right now is actually long-term damaging for her. And so I need to, and so I get it. Like this is a value judgment. And I'm not going to try and judge what you're going to be doing with what your wife will be doing. But, you know, I really do say that it's very important to be careful what we create intimacy around, because we can sometimes, it can be very comfortable to meet each other in very dirty, ugly places. And it can give this very warm feeling to be down in the mud together sometimes. But the long-term effect of that in different situations, you know, so we need to be very careful of like the long-term influence of intimacy in darkness somehow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear what you say. I hear what you say. And at the same time, I think it's you know, the one does not exclude the other, you know. So yes. So I hear what you say about this meeting each other in an intimacy that might be, you know, covered with a bit of darkness, because, you know, it is a bit of a painful field that we're creating by having sex with other people, you know, outside of our relationship. I hear that. At the same time, you know, it is our conscious choice to explore that territory. Yeah. And that is something that we, you know, where we feel, where we somehow can I don't know, maybe we can grow from there, or we want to look at that. Yeah. We want to look at that. We don't want to discard it. We want to look at it. And that's part of our container, Paul. That's part of our container. We want to look at that, and after exploring, we meet each other again. Yeah, and that is one thing. But we also have, like, as you said, like more love-based intimacy. I mean, we went on holiday last summer. I mean, we had a great time, man. You know, that was all like meeting each other as two people, no other people. It was just two of us and our son. We were in the mountains in France, and there, you know, there we, you know, so that's all also there, you know. So yeah.
So I mean, I think
no, let me say, I think it's nice how you describe that there's the two different ways of intimacy, you know. This intimacy that is like, oh, I'm happy we are back again because it was a bit fearful without you, huh? But I'm happy so we can meet again, and there's this other part. So yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think, you know, we want as much intimacy in the light as possible. Yeah, being careful that it's not fake intimacy in the light.
Yeah,
like, oh, I love you so much, my darling. Oh yes, I love you so much, and it's all just like blah blah words, right? But true intimacy in the light, we want that. And then when we see our partner, you know, has darkness in them, then it's not our job to just, you know, like look down on them and say, oh, you useless thing, you know. Like we need to be able to understand each other there, and to a certain extent, you know, help that. But I also believe, like, you know, leading the partner upwards is especially something that we can do as men. And I really like it the way you use the language of like conscious choice and exploration without having like a fixed idea of like, this is what this means and this is where it's going or something like that. Like I really see like you guys are wanting to use this not to just like continue to always messing around, but how can we be as a couple and as a family learning and growing in wisdom and strengthening our relationship in the long term as well. So I because, you know, where I meet this more often is with young guys who also say like, well, Paul, you've had all your fun basically, and now I'm young and I want to go out and have a whole lot of fun as well, and jump into bed with a whole lot of different women, and then I can kind of like learn from my mistakes. And this is the actual language a lot of guys use. They say, then I want to learn from my own mistakes. And it's like, well,
I agree with them and I understand them.
Yeah, and I think like I have two responses to them. The one is like, well, you know, there's a limit to how far you can stretch that. For example, like, you know, you don't go jumping off 10-story buildings to learn from your mistakes. That would be a really stupid thing. So it's like, you know, you can learn from the mistakes of other people, and you can also learn from just like normal wisdom. So, you know, there's plenty of sources. If you look at like, you know, science and social science and statistics, then, you know, monogamous men are more successful on every life area and every measure of success that you could imagine, you know, from, you know, drug and alcohol addiction to education to earnings, to all of these things. We can see like, you know, long-term monogamous relationship is very powerful, good thing for men. I think from a men's work perspective, like looking at like we do men's work to strengthen our masculinity, and some of the core aspects of masculinity is developing to become a stable, dependable man with integrity. And there's no better way to train that than in a relationship where you're confronted with, you know, a woman of you know, with everything that does, and that you don't have, you know, things to get out of that as well. And then, you know, there's just I think there's just so many areas that point towards like, you know, the strength of that kind of commitment. And then I realized like not everybody's going to accept that. And especially given our culture today and how much you're just constantly, you know, like shoved in your face, this understanding and glorification of like, you know, promiscuous life. It's like, young guys need to go out and do that.
Yeah, Paul. And on this, so I hear you, and you're right. And at the same time, you know, sex is all over the place, you know, social media, advertisement, you know, everything is being driven by sex. Yeah. So it is also something that is always there. It is driving life. It is because there is sex, there is life, you know, so we can, it is there. So it's a big thing. And I think it's totally underestimated the importance of it. Yeah. Hence the enormous, I think it was like 30% of the network of the internet traffic is porn. Yeah.
In the early days, it was more than 50.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, so that's also a pointer that it's like that it needs to be addressed, and that there is a huge longing for sexual expression. And of course, you know what you're telling here you know, yes, of course, that is to a certain extent, I guess, a way to look at it. On the other hand, when I would identify myself as a younger boy, you know, being bombarded with sexual imagery, having horny feelings and being attracted to women, watching asses and titties all the time, you know, and then, but I also want to walk a bit of a more of a conscious path, yeah. So, and because you use the word sexual mastery a lot, you know, if I would look in the market, yeah, for people or places that have answers for how to become a master in sexuality, you know, I would not go to a guy who is, you know, talking about monogamous and committing yourself to let's say, you know, a relationship, you know, then other people that have a different take on sexuality, that is like probably for them, you know, a much interesting answer than you know what you are currently saying, you know. And I'm not saying that you're wrong or that's not right, but I'm just saying, hey man, you know, if you wanna reach those guys, I think you should also honor their longing and their desire for this sexual expression, either it being out of insecurity, yes or no, but you know me, you know, I'm a big fan of allowing people to explore what they need to explore, you know, and, you know, after that exploration, they might, you know, become super tired and like, this is also not, and then, you know, then you can say, hey, well, maybe try marriage, you know, that might be great then, you know. Why that's my question to you. Why don't allow other men, especially young men, have a similar experience as you did, you know? Because I think there's so much value in there, you know. Anyway, but this is like this is the point where we always get with our discussions.
Well, we're getting
I'm happy I can make my point here.
Yeah, we have 10 minutes left, so I think it's a good point that you're, you know, kind of aiming things towards. I mean, if it's not for me a question of allowing or not allowing, you know, like men will do what men will do. So that they will do, and, you know, men will be attracted to different teachers and different schools of thought and different approaches for all kinds of different reasons. So I think for myself, you know, if I have to answer from a purely business point of view, then I've come from a field of working in this area of men who have been more explorative around their sexuality. And what I've seen is that the guys, so what I'm looking to build is something that I can see really men can really transform their lives in a positive direction and really move towards standing strong as a man, as a masculine man, with purpose, with direction, with a vision of the future, and able to lead others towards that as well. That's what I want to create. I want to help men to move much more in that direction. And by far the most powerful tool I can see to do that in my own life, and also it's been reflected in all the men I've worked with, the men who've just completely written off the opportunity, like the idea of a lifelong commitment to a woman. These men have very quickly not been able, it's been very clear how they've been unable to handle the structure that we put guys through in Maniphesto. So we have quite a demanding program. You've been through it yourself, so you know how difficult it is. You have to like create a vision for your future. Then you have to make concrete goals based on that vision. Then you have to actually work to move towards the goals that you've stated. You realize the goals were all wrong. You have to have different goals. You review them. You get all kinds of feedback from other guys who tell you that you're just bullshitting. You're not able to live up. You have no integrity, and you have to, you know, do that work on yourself. And so what I found is like, it doesn't mean that men need to already be in a monogamous relationship to be able to do that work. But if they write off completely the value of it, or if they don't see that it's a good thing to have in their life, and if they think like, no, all I really want to do is just to go out and, you know, play around and be a playboy and have fun and get a lot of instant gratification and become famous, you know, internet guru, rock star, whatever it is, it's like, I'm not in, I can't work with those guys. Like they're actually just in delusion. They're living in boyhood fantasies. And for me, this whole go out and experiment and learn from my mistakes, it's a boyhood fantasy. And I'm tired of working with boys. I want to work with men. And for me, like, masculine men are the guys who at least can recognize the value of a marriage with a woman for through a whole lifetime, you know. And it's like, you don't have to think like, okay, I'm completely ready for that myself. But if you can't see that that's a good thing, and I realize it's not the greatest marketing strategy, because what sells? Well, sex sells. Telling guys that they can just have unlimited amounts of the most horny, crazy, intense sex, that sells. But what I believe we're doing by selling that kind of thing is that we're turning men into zombies. I see men who are just zombified by a culture that's, as you said, feeding them sex all the time, and they're just sitting online and watching sex all the time, and they're actually not dealing with the problems that are holding them back in their life. And I see it again and again and again in guys' lives. They're not dealing with the problems because they're obsessed about women and getting laid and getting their sense of approval. And so I think, the kind of masculine community that we're creating is giving men a much deeper sense of grounded purpose, direction, and certainty that they're doing the right thing in their life. Did that answer your question?
No. But just to summarize what you're saying, I think you make a great case for living a value-based life. Yeah, because that's basically what you're saying. Instead of going for the short-term gratification, I totally agree with you. Yeah. At the same time, I at least aim to live a value-based life, and it includes sexuality also with other people outside of my marriage, but it is not based on instant gratification for myself, but it's
within very strict structures, I think, right?
Sorry,
the important thing is that it's within very strict structures, and that's why it's worked.
Exactly. And I think this might be a nice conclusion, huh? I mean for me, at least, you might disagree, but I think, in the end, I agree with you. But I would include sexual joy and playfulness also outside of your marriage, if it's at least based on a value-driven system. Then yeah, at least that's what I try to do in my life. And then I think it's okay to because sex is also fun, Paul. And that's sometimes, if I hear you talk and I'm like, oh, yeah, can we have fun as well? Because that's also there, and I think it's also very important that instead of only this message that you bring out here, it's also important to bring out the message that sexuality is fun, and that it is actually, I think, a necessity to get clean with your own sexual longing, your desires, and that you find your place in your sexual wheel, and that you create, your sexual life, as you desire. I think that's also important. Instead of what we also see a lot, that it's being suppressed and that it's not out there and that it's underground, etc. So no, that's my take on it.
Yeah, and I really get that conclusion, and I can see that that's been the best conclusion you've been able to see. I do believe that it's possible to, and I've experienced that it's possible to integrate at a higher level, to bring all of those things together within, and so I would say, and I think you're also open to the idea, Hajee, that maybe there's something that you're missing out on as well.
Yeah, but now you put yourself on a pedestal, Paul, huh? So
no, I'm just speaking from the perspective of wisdom traditions, it's a very new idea in our society that having open relationships and open marriages can be just as good as monogamy. So I think it bears being said that these things, for all of human history, have not been equal. Like if you read the Odyssey, it's one of the oldest stories it is the oldest story we have, pretty much. The Epic of Gilgamesh is older, but it's like the Odyssey is very, very ancient epic story, right? And the monogamy between those main characters of that story was the vital, absolutely essential element that carried the story and made those people into heroes. And so it's a very, very old idea and it's a new thing in our Western society, that oh no, well, maybe we should all just go play around and have more fun, and then everything's going to be great.
But you always talk in those extremes, and it's not that I say, just gonna have fun, no, that's not what I'm saying. I just want to make a case for celebrating sexuality, and exploring that and allowing that, and create a permission field where that is, because I don't think you are wrong, that's not what I'm saying. I'm only saying, be careful not to judge you know, the longing for playfulness, the longing for sexual exploration, you know, I think it's dangerous. And now here comes my judgment. Yeah, I think it's actually dangerous, yeah, to say that you have found the way and that people should live, you know, their sexuality according to your standards as you think they should do it. You know, there's also a big danger in there. Yeah, so I want to make a case, as I say, for you know, for at least have the communication about this, you know, keep talking about it, you know, because I think the real danger is in being it underground, you know. But I think it's you know, the world is not mature enough, you know, to you know, to step into the realm that you are currently, you know, practicing with your wife. You know, there needs to be a lot more exploration being done. At least that's what I think. Yeah. So my case will be, yeah, let's keep talking about this and let's, you know, yeah, well, you get what I mean. I hope, because
yeah. You know, there's a balance between being judgmental and doing it from my own perspective, and then being able to communicate what I see to be right to a young generation of very, very confused men. You know, I really see there's so many men who never hear this. You know, so just in this tiny little town where I'm living out in the countryside, you know, there's young boys who are incredibly confused about, and they think they're girls, or there's a young boy living here who thinks he's a lesbian, and wants to have a sex change operation, and you know, it's just in this complete chaos in his life, and so this, as you say, like this is way outside of what we're talking about, is far away from what he could receive as well, right? But that's the level of confusion we're reaching, and I believe a large part of that is because men are taking what you're saying a little bit too seriously and saying like, oh no, well, I'm not going to judge. My children should figure out for themselves. They should just discover everything by themselves. It's like, no, if I've lived a life with experience that has any value whatsoever, then I want to pass that on to the next generation as well as I can, without it being my kind of, you know, negative judgmental stuff, of course, but as you know, hopefully telling our stories. And I think you and me have done a fairly decent job of doing that here today.
I think so too, Paul. I think so too. And I think this is two great perspectives on how you can deal with your sexuality. Yeah, for sure.
Good. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you stepping up to it, Hajee. It's been giving me a lot of thought before we had it, and it's been good doing it with you. Every time I've really thought about it, I've noticed some like insecurities about doing it. I'm like, no, this is going to be good with Hajee, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate this conversation, Paul. And I think, you know, getting back to the objectives of this talk, yes, I think I understand you a little bit more than like an hour.
and I certainly did like deconstructed some of my kind of shadows around you as well. So
yeah, cool.
So thanks, Hajee. Great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. See you later.
Cheers.